What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Seth, and we're back again with some more Trove. And today we're going to be talking about last week's developer live stream. There's not going to be anything that we're going to talk about this week because this week's dev live stream was extra life. So they pretty much streamed for like 24 hours or something like that. Not only just the Trove devs, but all of the devs at Tryon Worlds, right? And with that, we already know that there's not really going to be that much new info coming out. Now, next week, or well, very soon, in fact, is going to be the Halloween event that's going to be hitting on Tuesday. So really excited about that. And then next week's dev live stream should hopefully end up actually telling us some stuff. Now, I still got a video that's going to be highlighting the new Bomber Royale map that's coming out with U10. And, you know, generally, I already have a video that talked about 5-star dungeons and crystal gear, which all of this stuff was talked about during last week's live stream. So, of course, I prioritized all of that rather than getting to all of these questions. Now, we will get into all these questions today, however, but otherwise, I've been kind of busy with busy with stuff. I got a new keyboard, so I'm trying to get used to that, and just been busy with all the MapleStory stuff. But either way, big shout out to Shirokiri. He is an absolute baller, always summarizes all this, and it makes it insanely easy, not only for myself, but for everybody else involved. And then otherwise, before we get started, would appreciate if you guys would hit that like button. Helps the video show up in searches, and it helps me out enormously. So, with the previous live stream, we can reclaim Pearls of Wisdom from Stellar Gear. Does this also include pearls from other rarities of gear? So they say for right now, it's just going to be Stellar. We don't want to encourage farming of the lower rarities. So this kind of makes it so that Stellar Gear is not entirely useless. I want to make something clear here, because I know that in my videos I keep on saying, you know, Stellar Gear is absolutely useless and all this stuff. Jeez Louise, sorry about that. Water went down the wrong tube. Stellar Gear and Magic Find is still going to be useful, because obviously you're going to need the pearls for the crystal gear in the first place. But the whole thing is that Stellar Gear does get taken down a whole lot, especially considering the fact that gardening eventually is going to end up giving us pearls as well. But we're not exactly sure how the gardening 2.0 works. So I don't know whether or not the gardening is very, very easy to get these resources, or if you have to be in the higher tiers of it. So speaking of gardening, will Insta-growers work on the new gardening profession, or is it only limited to current content? Now, this is kind of interesting, but they don't really mention it in more detail. They say that the old instant growers will make plants sprout faster, but doesn't affect their maturing. So I'm guessing that will put plants down, and maybe they have different tiers. So you can end up forcing a plant to actually like sprout out of the ground. And then the maturing process of the plant is going to be something different. Now, fingers crossed that this isn't just some dumb method so that they make a current instant growers useless, because they're probably going to end up adding a whole bunch of new pay-to-win stuff to do with the gardening. That's just what I'm expecting, because they've done it with every other update, man, so their track record doesn't lie. I'll honestly be surprised if there's no pay-to-win with the gardening. How many new gem slots will we get with U10? So they did confirm 3. Mario, and Luigi Mario. They confirmed 3, where we're going to get 1 empowered gem slot and 2 lesser gem slots, and which is good that we finally have that nailed down, and we know there's just going to be another set of 3. I don't know how the HUD's going to end up looking. It's going to look very different, but either way, that's going to increase our power rank exponentially, because people, you know, you guys and gals are always commenting saying how difficult it is to get power rank. Well, I just keep on saying the same thing that I'll say even today. Just wait until U10 comes out, because if you can get 5,000 power rank now to prepare, you're going to be able to just fly through it as far as the PR is concerned, right? So the Sagely Dragon scales drop from the Forbidden Spires are set to increase their drop rates affected by Dragon Day. Will that change also reduce the amount of flux when loot collecting them? No, they will loot collect to the same amount. Okay, I guess who cares? U10 now set for a winter release. Will there be any other major updates this year, or will 2018 only have 3 major updates? No, this will be the last update of the year. We already know that because they ended up delaying it. Now, the funny thing is, and I've talked about this before, I find it so, like, it's kind of annoying that they say that U10 was delayed until winter for the sake of getting it ready for the console release, when what they've ended up saying in the more recent streams, and when they've actually shown off this content, you can see it's not done yet. That's why it was delayed. It had nothing to do with them getting it ready for console. Maybe we would have gotten it in November or something, but it looks like they're going for late November, early December, maybe, for the release, if I had to guess. What's the plan for early 2019? So they're going to wrap up the Geode arc with another major update. So that update's going to have the new Primordial Dragon, you know, the new Titan bosses and stuff like that. Will the 5-star dungeons be exclusive to the Geode surface, or will we see them in other Uber worlds as well? So on release, this will be exclusive to the Geode surface, but that doesn't mean they won't appear elsewhere. I honestly don't know why they don't just make it appear everywhere, because I originally thought that 5-star dungeons was going to be from U10 exclusively, let alone now we know it's just the Geode surface biome, period. So I'm really curious, what does U10 actually give us? Is it just higher difficulty for the sake of getting maybe more of some time-gated resource or something? Like, I don't know, dude. So with the possibility of having 5 stats on a single piece of gear, does it mean that re-rolling the stats in the Chaos Forge will be more difficult? Because we would end up having a 5th stat to end up re-rolling. So they say the re-rolling will be the exact same as before, and the 5th stat that you end up getting on Crystal Gear will not be able to be re-rolled. So it will be on Crystal Gear and won't be re-rolled. So I don't know why they reiterated the same point, but it means that getting Crystal Gear with the stats that you want will end up being, I guess, a little bit more important, right? So that's why Crystal Gear being as cheap as it is a good thing. And it does mean that pearls should hopefully end up retaining their value, because people could end up just blasting through them just to get the right stats that they want on the gear, which we don't know whether or not the gear is going to end up having too many stats that are useful, like the armor stat. It sounds cool, because it means that we can move away from death defying, but more damage is pretty much all you do in Trove. So I'm thinking that we're probably just gonna want armor puncture on everything, right? Like, I don't know yet. We'll see, because we don't know what the rest of the stats are either. They've only talked about 2 of them. So then what will happen with the Bomber Royale Season 1 rewards? Will they be completely gone from the store, or will we still be able to buy them alongside with the Season 2 rewards? Now this is kind of gross, but the current items that are in this Bomber store right now will still exist and will still be attainable with Season 1 coins. There will be a few ways to get them. The Tome, which is weekly and utter trash, or you can buy the Tome for Season 2 coins, and then you can buy Season 1 coins for Season 2 coins with a ratio of 2 to 1. So you need 2 Season 2 coins in order to get 1 Season 1 coin, which makes absolutely no sense. You're putting in the same amount of grind time. That means that right now, folks, like seriously, right now, if there's ever a time where you want to get into Bomber Royale to end up getting, say, the Twin Dragon Egg, for example, do it now. Because not only does it mean that that dragon essentially becomes twice as many Bomber Royale tokens in order for you to get it yourself, that means that it's going to be across the board more difficult for everybody. So that dragon's price should shoot through the roof. Because 2 to 1, like, are you kidding? They also said that the items will also be put into the boom boxes for Season 2. So I guess that we are very rarely going to be able to get the Twin Dragon Egg, the auras, and all of that stuff out of the Season 2 bomber boxes. So that's not bad, but I don't like the 2 to 1 thing. Like, you should always just be able to buy it outright, and it should just be even, because otherwise that's twice the amount of bomber time for a dragon that, honestly, like, it's a cool dragon, but I don't know. I just don't really agree with that. Will the gems go up to Crystal Tier? They will not. We didn't want to introduce a new gem color and then make you get all of your other gems up to the top. However, during this moment in the stream, I'm surprised Shiro didn't end up mentioning that, but I was so frustrated, because while, like, all the other devs were kind of talking at the same time, but the main guy that was responding to this kind of said subtly under his breath about how this doesn't mean that Crystal Tier gems will not be a possibility sometime in the future. Something along those lines. So Crystal Gems is just going to be a thing eventually, folks. Unfortunately or fortunate, hopefully they can implement it in a way that's not going to absolutely cripple the game more than it already is. But I wouldn't put it past them that they're just going to add Crystal Tier gems eventually. So speaking of which, This is ridiculous. So is crystal gear going to be able to level up as usual, or is it going to end up being like rings? So you're going to level it up as usual, but we do also confirm that there are not going to be crystal rings. Like, I don't know why they've got this compulsion where whenever they end up adding new content, it's like, guys, you do realize you have to bring everything else up to this new tier. Like, it doesn't make sense that it's not. The gems can go ahead and stay at stellar because it doesn't make sense for them to be upped anymore anyways, and we would end up being way too powerful unless crystal tier gems should be something that we level our gems up from stellar into, rather than being a whole new set of gems that we need, you know? Then problem solved. Like, seriously. So anyways, crystal gear is the crystal gear going to be craftable, or will it be obtained in a similar way like we do the class gems? So they ended up actually showing that off during their stream, where you're just going to end up buying it from a merchant for 10 flux, and that's not a joke. Like, everybody always gets confused about it, but no, they specifically said that is not a placeholder price. They want everybody to be able to have this new tier of gear, but leveling it apparently is going to be super duper difficult, which I hope it's actually difficult because the grind is difficult, not because it's time gated, because time gated content is not difficult in any way, shape, or form. It's just time gated and takes a long time. So since we are going to have an updated gardening system, that sounds pretty good so far. Would it be possible to have a breeding mechanic eventually down the line too? It would be cute to see creatures running around the clubs, and also the harvesting to harvest resources from them. So it's not on the radar for now. We're doing experiments and trying new stuff out with the revamp to gardening. We'll see how people like it and go from there. I mean, like, the gardening does sound kind of interesting. You know, the fact that they're adding like these different mechanics to the gardening profession is kind of the same as the Geode update, where I think it's just going to come and go because the majority of players don't care, you know? Like, there's going to be a few people that are just going to absolutely fall in love with the gardening mechanic, and I think that it's going to be kind of cool to passively gain these more difficult resources through gardening that, but essentially the gardening in general is just another form of time-gated content. You know, to an insane degree, where you're only going to be able to get certain resources every 3 days, for example. And it's not like it's a bad thing. It's fine, but it's like nobody was asking for a gardening overhaul, and here they are wasting their resources towards it rather than focusing on a bigger combat update, you know? But we do see all the new gear and crystal gear and all of that stuff. They did also mention that the stats, the 5th stat on crystal gear, is not going to be affecting anywhere else in the game except for the Geode, but in the future they're going to have it affect other areas of the game. So hopefully that's not just something that they're saying and something they abandon, because I think that in 2019 they should focus on getting their butts in gear and actually like making the game a more complete experience rather than just this mishmash of like updates that are just all over the place, you know? Because that's one thing that I'll say about Trove, as opposed to like a game like MapleStory that, you know, I've been playing it like crazy. It's like that game at least feels complete. Trove still feels like a mess. It feels like every feature of it is a good idea but executed very poorly, where it doesn't link up with the rest of the content very well, you know? And it's just, I really wish they would start focusing their attention on that rather than trying to always up themselves by putting out some new fancy gear and new content that is not inherently exciting because of the fact that it's not going to work with anything else. Like, U10 sounds great, don't get me wrong. I'm excited about being able to grind some new areas and stuff like that, but the fact that it's disjointed the same as the Geode area, where it's just completely separate from the rest of the game, and crystal gear just suddenly makes every other gear in the game worthless, is just like, why, you know? So anyways, hashtag rant. So is it intentional that the bubble dragon fragments only come from water? Do they only come from water fish? No other fish? That's actually kind of interesting. So anyways, how does the new stat work? Armor and puncture. So armor mitigates damage and puncture gets through the armor. The enemies will have both stats. Their armor will drastically reduce your outgoing damage, so you'll need puncture to bypass it to increase your damage back. And puncture also raises damage on yourself, so you'll need armor to reduce that to yourself. I think what they're trying to say is that puncture on the enemies will end up reducing your armor stat, which, I mean, we've got death defying anyway, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference unless they disable death defying in U10. I wouldn't put it past them because they're doing lots of weird stuff like that to kind of force players into their specific way of playing it rather than experimentation. That said, again, I just still would kind of argue the fact that if death defying works, more damage is always going to end up trumping it. That said, being able to have an armor stat and actually be able to have builds of characters that can be tanks in shadow towers and stuff, because you don't really need that in the open world, I still think that that's really cool. Or maybe if 5-star dungeons weren't so sporadic and all over the place, then it could end up being useful to have somebody as a tank, like say a candy barb, for example, pulling all the enemies in. But again, you know, as far as normal grinding is concerned, we're probably just going to end up breezing through all this stuff, and you can be pretty cheesy with the enemies by just jumping in the air or stuff like that, you know. So anyways, since you're adding vanity skins for bombs and Bomber Royale, would you guys ever consider adding more vanity skins for other parts of the game, such as damage number reskins? Which is interesting because this is another mechanic that MapleStory already has. Not to mention MapleStory also, I didn't even realize, Merc just told me, there's a recent Halloween set item, or suit, let's say, that you can get out of the store. It's just completely vanity. But if you're wearing the whole suit, your animations actually change. So your jump's different, your walk's different, your idle animation's different. I think that'd be pretty cool if Trove had stuff like that, but the mechanics just aren't really there for it. So anyways, with the different damage numbers, clearly they can do this because the comic book hero character, like that costume for the Vanguard, changes the combat numbers. So clearly it can happen. Or do they change the combat numbers? No, I think they just end up changing the video effects of the punching and stuff. But either way, we will certainly consider it for other areas after seeing how the bomb reskins go. I mean, again, it's like you're not really going to get that much feedback in the Bomber Royale area of the game, guys. So you should just start testing it in some of the more popular areas. So will Shadow Tower boss rooms ever get a revamp, as most are just identical looking rooms? We will look into it when we revisit Shadow Towers, and they've said they're going to revisit Shadow Towers in 2019. So I'm expecting that with that update, we're going to see the new 5th stat working in Shadow Towers. That's what I would expect. So since we will get upcoming gems from Tower gem boxes, can you take out class gems and fragments from it? Maybe let us farm class gem keys via fragments or something. So this is interesting. They kind of dodged the question, oddly enough, but they are answering a different question, which I already had a video come out talking about this. So many people were frustrated, where they say they originally said that the new gem type would not come out of empowered gem boxes, but they're going to change that. And then they also add that the contents of the boxes will unlikely change except for adding the new gem type. So I guess in that way they ended up saying no to that question, but it's a good thing that they clarified it. And then also they ended up saying, this was already on another stream about our shadow gem boxes being affected as well. Not the empowered gem boxes. So is there any possibility to craft already discovered companions in case you need to loot collect uncommon or rare ones to avoid using space in your inventory? No, we have no support for that, and probably won't be high priority. I don't know why, like they put all this effort and work into making this Geode area, and then it's just like it's still an unbalanced mess and nobody likes it, and they just refuse to change any of the numbers for some reason. They have hinted that they might put a companion effigy in the store, which, I mean, it better only be like 10 or 20 bucks. But the fact that they make the golden eggs as value as like a golden dragon egg is just ridiculous. So it's probably going to be overpowered. So will U10 give any crystals? No, they do not. Apparently you're not going to be able to get crystals from U10 or anything like that. Will cornerstone / respawn and / get world ID be available or be unavailable on U10 biomes like the Geode caves? So no, they won't be blocked as U10, as in U10 is an adventure world. So once again, kind of bolstering the fact, and they did talk about this, and I think that was another stream before this one. But unfortunately, despite the fact that they gave us all of this baloney saying how, oh, the Geode is a different planet, so that's why Patron doesn't affect the caves, which if Patron affected the Geode caves, honestly, I'd say that it would be pretty balanced. You know, that would negate a lot of the garbage that we're dealing with as far as having to grind for like 15,000 hours and stuff, right? But anyways, I still think it's hilarious how they made all these excuses why patron doesn't work in the Geode area, when frankly it's just they didn't want to bother adding the code for it. And then they're like, oh yeah, U10's gonna be affected by it. And it's like, U10 is the Geode surface. It's under the same lore of why patron doesn't work there. So yeah, but anyways, so will there be cornerstone plots on the Geode surface? There won't be. But there are going to be outposts that craft, refill flasks, and buy the crystal gear from, but no cornerstones. The surface is under attack, so it wouldn't be safe for your homes. Okay. See, there they go with their weird Geode lore again. Like, has the PR requirements been mentioned yet? It's not been nailed down yet. Like, you'd think that with this update being like 2 or 3 months away, they could just tell us what the PR requirement's going to be, instead of acting like they're still working on. So far, they've said 15K. It's gonna be 15K or 20K. Like, that's all there is to it for U10. And I would expect 15K if they want it to be more accessible. But again, we don't know what's going to end up coming with U10 specifically. Like, what's going to be in that adventure world that is going to be unique to the Geode surface, because it's not 5-star dungeons. So is it just the resources? I don't know. What's the method of upgrading crystal gear? So it's going to be similar to the current method. So you're going to be using the forge and just using various materials. Also, the crystal gear that they did show off did only have 5 stars on it. So it is a possibility that we're only going to level up our crystal gear 5 times, which is something that some of us were kind of hoping that there'd be more levels towards it, just because we don't want to be able to breeze through it. That said, if there's only 5 levels to it, I'm expecting that it's going to end up being very, very expensive, and we already know that it's going to take Geode surface resources, which are completely different than the Geode caves. This way, it prevents any of us who have dedicated our time towards this game to actually getting, skipping through all the new content and getting ourselves super duper powerful, as we very well deserve to, which I don't know. Like, it's like, at least just make the new gear difficult to get, not the levels towards the new gear. But anyways, I don't mean to be so overly critical, but if there's any place to be overly critical, it's in these types of videos, folks. So anyways, will our hats and faces also be crystal, and will crystal gear have the same stats as our current stellars, movement speed in particular? So you will be able to end up having a face and hat, obviously, but the upgrades will be more for each level. So I didn't emphasize this enough when I was talking about the crystal gear in my recent crystal gear video. But the thing that's really exciting about the crystal gear is that it means we're going to be able to have more movement speed, and more so than that, more attack speed. So if we actually go on over to my Vanguard right here, what's our attack speed actually? Our attack speed is 242%. We're easily going to be able to get to that 300% attack speed for the Vanguard, which should end up making him, as well as a lot of other characters, even more beautiful for farming. On top of the fact that we're going to have more movement speed, not only for like the Vanguard, but for the top speedrunner in the game, not speedrun as in Shadow Towers, but I mean U9 or U10 farming, Neon Ninja. He's gonna fly, dude. Like, seriously. He's already brokenly fast, so I'm excited to see what we're gonna have with the crystal gear. So somebody else asked the same question about will crystals drop from the Geode surface, which I guess is different than asking if it drops from U10, but they say no plans for that right now. Will a 26k PR player breeze through U10? Are the armor and penetration stats a way to prevent this? So they say that a 26k PR player will be at an advantage over others, obviously, but the new stats will prevent it from being a breeze, as you'd need more puncture to deal damage and more armor to mitigate said damage, which again, I'm expecting this is just going to be the same as Ultra Towers, where our damage is just lowered, but the armor puncture is going to end up pushing through that, and then the armor stat ourselves is going to end up working the same as it does on the enemy. So again, I am fully expecting that we're just going to go in there and just blast through everything, especially if you're in a big group, right? What level will these worlds be? So the Geode surface is going to actually start from U8 and go up to U10. U10 is exclusive to the Geode surface for right now. But eventually they said it could possibly end up branching out into the other elemental worlds in the future, which I'm expecting when they do that is probably when we'll end up getting the new tier of gems, right? So will armor penetration apply to old content, or is it Geode surface mechanic only? This is the question that I've been answering over and over, but they say at launch it will be the Geode surface only, but that doesn't mean it won't go elsewhere eventually. So hopefully they mean the rest of the game and not just the Shadow Towers. But I think it could be pretty cool if we had that in Shadow Towers. It would make Ultra just that much easier, right? So it was mentioned last stream that the new content is designed so that players can't stockpile items to instantly finish it. With that in mind, will our current augmented gem focus items and gem boosters apply to the new gems? Yes, of course they will. They're a cash shop item. So they're removing cracked gems as an outcome. So you can't have your gems crack anymore, which means that jade clovers can be used to craft more horseshoes. You're not going to be using jade clovers anymore. So I wonder, does that mean that as far as a free-to-play player is concerned, jade clovers end up becoming useless? And thus, are they going to end up changing our jade clover tome? I highly doubt it, because they're probably going to keep jade clovers in the game for a time-gated item that you can get out of a weekly tome in order to end up crafting horseshoes, which is pretty much the only way that a free-to-play player can end up actually getting any of the higher-tiered gem items, you know, gem rolling items, outside of like random events and random boxes and stuff that end up showing up, right? But I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. So will the new U10 world have a player count limit as the Geode Cave? So the limit's going to be the same as Adventure Worlds, which is 75. And then it used to be we could get the mounts, boats, and others for credits only. Things in the store from Chaos Chess as well. Since this is no longer the case, can you give us another non-credit based path to acquire these items? Perhaps Qubits or Luxian. So I guess what they're saying is how a lot of things in the cash shop are worth money exclusively, which is very greedy and kind of annoying system that they have in the game, but whatever. So they say they're unlikely to do it because the introduction of credit pouches gives a way to allow you to make these purchases, although it is possible for them to show up on Luxian. Not the credit pouches showing up in Luxian, just some of the items that are bought for credits. So I think that the person ended up asking their question incorrectly. If I'm even right about what they're saying, I'm pretty sure that they're saying that can the cash pack items go in Luxian's inventory, because otherwise you have to spend money for it, you know? So or they're just saying some of the items that were removed from the store, which eventually end up showing in Luxian's inventory anyway. So the Landscaper 8000T, which is a bulldozer mount, is only 50 mastery when the others in the store are 100. Will this be adjusted? This was an oversight. It should have had 100 mastery and will be fixed as they pass over it. Okay. So we got two more questions here. When were the new Rampage bosses coming? We aren't showing them just yet. So that's going to be, I don't know why they don't answer. That's going to be with the third update of the Geode. Unless they're talking about the new Rampage bosses to the Geode surface. I'm not sure if they're talking about the Rampage bosses or the Titan bosses. They could be a little bit more clear about that, because they're two different things, right? Kind of. Rampage bosses are like Titan bosses, just reskinned. And also just giant pinatas. So last question, can we have an option to disable the XP bar in the top left? Many of us are level 30 and the bar gets rather pointless from that point. So they say no and yes. An option to disable it is kind of annoying, so we might make it disable at max level automatically. I mean, that kind of just sums up the entirety of the dev team, doesn't it? Oh, it's kind of annoying, so we're not going to do it that way. Instead, we'll just make it go away, which means that they're probably going to run into problems in the future if they end up ever giving us higher tiers of leveling, right? Like, it's just, give us an option, guys. Let us turn it on or off. Or just get rid of it, because honestly, who cares? Like, seriously. Anyways, that's going to do it, everybody. Thanks for watching. Very much appreciated. Hopefully, you had patience enough to deal with my... I don't necessarily want to say that I'm being like overly negative here, but I know that I can be a little bit overly critical sometimes. And most of all, it's just because it's like, come on, you know, we've been playing this game for a long enough time. Just throw a little our way, guys. So hopefully U10 is going to end up being something cool and not just an absolute flop of an update. You know, in the meantime, we've got MapleStory 2 keeping us busy. It's a free-to-play game as well, and that game actually removed a lot of their pay-to-win aspects, and pretty much everything you buy in it is just vanity. And I'm not trying to just sell you on MapleStory. I'm saying that MapleStory, to me, delivers what Trove doesn't. And Trove delivers what MapleStory doesn't in some ways, but more so than not, MapleStory's got a lot going for it. Either way, though, we'll see if I'm talking about it in a couple years, which most likely I am. I'm just excited. You know, it's an exciting time for games. You know, we even got Red Dead coming out and stuff, but I don't want to ramble about that. I'm excited about U10. I am. Even though it sounds like an absolute mess and it sounds like they did a horrible job implementing it into the game, I'm still genuinely excited to see what's going to end up happening with it. I still think it's going to end up being really, really cool. Thanks for watching, though. Very much appreciated. Don't forget to like, sub, hit that notification bell, and if you want to support me, you can always sponsor the YouTube channel with that join button down below, as well as there's a link in the description to my merch store. Oh, hi, Merc. And then if you don't have any money but you still want to help me out, check the link down below to Gawkbox, which is a way you can donate to me for absolutely free by just playing phone games for like 2-3 minutes. Sign on and stay epic, everybody.